We come from Konsthall C. We are artists, and Konsthall C is both an art space and a public artwork. We will read a text to you that reflects our experiences from working there, and we will read really fast. The cultural house where we are now was built on the grounds of the torn down old Klara-kvarteren, the Klara district. Hundreds of people were forced out from their homes, workplaces and communities almost exactly 50 years ago. They cried in despair and some died of sorrow. Artists, poets and journalists that met in cafes, editorial offices of newspapers and in studios in this very neighborhood. Many of those who were forced away ended up in the very suburbs where we, artists and culture workers, are now supposed to drive the next wave in order to produce creativity, surplus value, and raise the value of property. According to our way of reading how the system works, this Creative Time Summit, in collaboration with the Public Art Agency Sweden, fits perfectly into the city development project called Vision 2030, City of Stockholm. The city is portrayed as a sustainable playground, but Stockholm and New York are nowadays playgrounds only for those who have been able to enrich themselves. When houses, squares, schools, healthcare and the net has been fenced in, privatized and sold out cheaply on ideological grounds. Stockholm is one of the world's most segregated cities. Who owns the public space?
During the last 2 terms of office, 8 years from 2006 to 2014, Sweden's right-wing neoliberal government has sold out municipally owned buildings, pharmacies, hospitals, schools, and public housing to private owners and risk capitalists. A whole suburb of 1,200 homes was sold overnight to the former nationalist Ingvar Kamprad-related yellow and blue company IKEA, Ikano Properties. The public space is now owned by the company. The people in Hagsätra are no longer permitted to demonstrate political issues in the square. So, what is happening to these public spaces where the social and political encounters are supposed to collide? When publicly owned and shared properties are simply sold out, and the consequences are opposite the idea of free speech. The agoraphobia is spreading viral amongst the ruling class. Cities and squares are not public spheres in a political sense. They are marketplaces. Meeting places are commercially run. You have to pay to be there. The commons are no longer commons.
Everybody has been put under the regime of quasi-democracy. Capitalism has created hyper-inequality and super-gentrification has already taken place within ourselves. The synapses, the genes, the body, the relations, it's described as the freedom to choose, freedom as compulsion, but who really has the choice?
While EU migrants are freezing at street corners, armies of new entrepreneurs in the service sector are feeding the increasingly rich middle and upper classes in Sweden. They say there is a crisis. It creates austerity, but the rich class never were richer than now. The quest for surplus value has created a gigantic democratic deficit in our cities. No, not only in the cities. To hide this fact, artists and art are invited. We are supposed to fill a gap and gloss over acts of violence. Let's talk about gentrification, art, and property again. The intertwining relationship between art, capital, and property speculation is more than ever obvious in Stockholm. There are no neutral spaces. The commercial art cluster at Hudiksvallsgatan, where some of you maybe met yesterday night, are neighbors with Bukowski's Market and the Public Art Agency Sweden, Liljevalchs hub in Solna, Oscar Properties and the Icebreaker Isbrytaren, Lindéngruppen och Färgfabriken, the Meatpacking District in both Stockholm and New York, and many others. According to many parties, Konsthall C has been the hub of the city development in its own locality since its foundation 10 years ago, a building with artist studios and a laundry. An appropriation of artistic activity is taking place everywhere. It is a schizoid, Faustian relationship.
Art is a resource to be extracted. This has to do with the underlying economic interests which rule the so-called city development project that we financed in Stockholm and around the world at an increasingly accentuated speed. Many are pointing downwards at the artists as if the artists were responsible for what we call gentrification. We'd claim that we should follow the invisible hand, the finger, the arm, over the shoulder, and to the brain steering this process. Kaput, capital, capitalism. The city development project in the neighborhood of Konsthall C is called Hållbara Hökarängen, Sustainable Hökarängen. It contains an art cluster, urban farming, a signage system, and behavior-affecting methods created from above, all in the name of sustainability. According to information materials and policies, residents of Hökarängen are presumed to behave badly in regards to use of resources, while from the housing company's side, the maintenance of housing and facilities is poor.
Let's talk about relations, capital and art, real estate and art, property investment and art, power and art, sustainability and art, politics and art, tourism and art.
We argue that among many instruments to govern this exercise of power, art is also one of them. If tourism is a kind of Trojan horse in the neo-colonial strategy, so often artists, architects and other cognitive workers are flowing out of the wooden horse's body. Since September this year, Sweden voted the right-wing government out of office. We're getting indications that public housing and the so-called million program neighborhoods will receive a huge contribution in terms of culture and funding for restoration. This actualizes the question of whom will benefit from these political decisions: the property owners, the architects, the curators, the artists, or the people who lives right there, right
We,
now.
the work group at Konsthall C, do not want to be the lubricant and social processes that the system have created. We would rather be part of a movement that put an end to a system that is killing us in the name of sustainability. Together with people in the southern part of Stockholm, we will struggle to maintain dignity and for what is left of the commons despite exploitative speculation. Thank you.